What's the craziest story you've heard of a couple breaking up? This happened at my son's school. My son got a new boy in his class when he was about 6. We live in France, so the school system is different. They quickly became very good friends as it turned out they only lived down the road from us. A nice family. Mom was a teacher at the same school, and they also had a daughter that was 2 years older than the boys. We also met several times for drinks with this family, did some activities together like hikes and beach picnics. Could say we were quite good friends. A couple of years on, the old school principal retires and the new principal starts shamelessly pursuing our friend. Phone calls, flowers, gifts. She is blown away by his attention and starts an affair with him. For example, the kids went on a 3-day school trip in the mountains. She was one of the accompanying teacher. And the principal goes with them. He never went on school trips otherwise. The affair was the talk of the whole school. The son told my son, "Mr. B, principal, will be my stepdad soon." There was a messy divorce as far as I know. We are not too much in contact with this family anymore. Our sons are still friends. They are both 14 and still in the same class. The principal and the teacher are still at school. They got married straight after the divorce was finalized. The kids are still in that school. I really feel sorry for the guy. He was really nice, really loved his wife, was a great dad. He really didn't deserve this. Story 2. The pretty girl in my class got married and had a kid with a decent guy. She was cheating on him with another local dude. Husband found out and went to confront the other guy. Other guy shot at him, hit him in the back. Husband escapes but dies on the side of a road from gunshot. Shooter claimed self-defense and got off. Victim's family told wife and dude to get out of town or they would get wasted. She took the kid and left town with the guy. Feel bad for the kid living with their dad's killer. Far as I know, the wife has never returned. Story 3. Couple had been dating since middle school. Stereotypical teen sweethearts, everyone thought they'd get married. One day she isn't at school and he isn't doing great. She tried to hurt herself the night before, and he wouldn't say anything about it. It was odd since she had no history of depression and was an all-around happy person. She finally starts talking to people, and what happened gets out. Her boyfriend had been banging her mom from the beginning. The whole relationship destroyed her parents' marriage. Dude ended up having to go to a different school over the drama and hate he got. Story 4. Friend was an underwater welder. Terrible job, but pays well. They won't let you work after a certain age though, 40. Friend and partner had bought an amazing house in the Philippines near where he worked, and every dollar was now going into his retirement savings because the career was so time-limited. Work was a couple weeks out at sea, then a couple weeks back and so on. One day he gets home from a shift, discovers his partner has sold the house and put all the proceeds as well as all the contents of his savings into her parents' name and then bugged out. Yes, she had been cheating on him. My friend tried, but couldn't get any substantial money back due to everything having been in both their names and nothing obvious in the ex-partner's accounts anyway. The in-laws were somehow untouchable. So he was close to retiring and living the sweet life in comfort in a glorious home he owned outright, to being nearly washed out of his career and also totally penniless. He moved back to Canada and lived in a crowded shared house with a bunch of 20-somethings and started from scratch as a construction worker at 40. Story 5. My dad told me this heartbreaking story. Back in the early 70s, women in my country were not allowed to have or manage their own bank accounts. This lady, a stay-at-home mother of 5, would often come to the bank where my dad worked. She came from a pretty wealthy family, so she had savings. But as she married, her entire wealth passed to her husband. She comes that day and asks for some cash, as she would usually do. My dad checks, double checks, triple checks. The bank account is empty. He goes to his colleagues, and one of them tells that poor woman's husband had come earlier in the day and emptied the account. The lady turns white as paper. My dad thought she was going to faint and storms out of the bank. She came back a few days later absolutely devastated. Hubby had abandoned them, her and the 5 children. Not only was he gone, but fully disappeared, like she could not trace him. After a few years, I think she discovered he had gone to South America, and she and the kids were left to starve. My dad tried everything in his small bank executive power to help her get her money back, but hubby had every right to do what he did. That poor lady turned from being one of the wealthiest clients to the brink of homelessness in a day. She had to return to her parents with the 5 kids, suffer the guilt and the shame and so on. Thankfully for her, she found love again a few years later and got in a better situation. But as my dad said, I never understood how a man could be so cruel. Story 6. Dude was 22, girl was 19. Guy lived in Seattle, girl lived in Mississippi. They met online and fell in love. Guy would fly down every month or two to take her out and spend time with her and her family. He would bring her family gifts every visit. Her family is absolutely adored Guy, hoping he'd marry their daughter. One of the cutest and most perfect couples ever. Just a romance out of a Disney movie. Almost 2 years later, Guy decides it's time, packs his bags and drives across the country to move closer to her. They were both super excited. She was his whole world and his future. Less than a week after moving, girl cheated on and left Guy for someone with a perm and Harry Potter glasses. Guy drowned himself in alcohol and ended up dead few months later. He was my best friend. He didn't deserve that. Just a wild situation to break up in. Story 7. When I was in my early 20s, a friend of mine had a girlfriend who was bipolar but took medication to control it. One day they decide to take mushrooms and go to the art museum and enjoy the high. Well, little did he know she stopped taking her meds. High is dying down, so they get in the car to leave. She's driving and starts asking if he loves her and how much and would he die for her. Starts speeding. They get up to about 60 miles per hour and smash into the back of a car stopped at a red light, which pushes that car into traffic and the driver is killed instantly. Both my friend and his girlfriend were injured but okay, and the entire time they were pulling her from the car and hauling her away, she was trying to take her clothes off and grab him to have sex. She was taken away to a mental health facility, and he somehow came to my birthday party a few days later and told me this whole story when I asked where his girlfriend was. Needless to say, they broke up. I have no idea what happened to her, but I'm sure she was charged with manslaughter. Story 8. Knew a girl in 5th grade and was in the middle school band with her. Likewise, when we moved to high school, we were in high school marching band together. Our middle school band teacher and our high school band teacher are a married couple in their 30s, no kids. Junior year of high school, the rumored rampant affair between the high school, male, band teacher and my junior and high school classmate had been found out by school/police/ the whole town to be factual. The police came and removed the small couch out of the band director's office during school hours. He vanished, and so did my classmate. The poor guy's wife, our middle school band teacher, stays with him in spite of it, and the very next year falls seriously ill with aggressive cancer that ended her life very soon after diagnosis. Then, the ex-band director and the classmate of mine are officially a couple. They married when she was still 17 with her parents' consent. They've been married all this time. We are now mid-30s, so significantly longer than first marriage, and have had 2 children together. Absolutely the most insane saga. Story 9. Friend's boyfriend was building a house. He moves in with her during construction. The plan is she will move in with him when house is ready. He asks her input on architecture details, etc. Moving day arrives. They're all set to move in. She goes to work with the movers coming that day. Comes back and the movers have only taken his stuff and not hers. She calls him in confusion, and that is the first time he tells her he's having doubts and doesn't want to move in together. She's completely in shock and crying. He doesn't even have the balls to break up with her. Just moves out and then never calls her again, and she's like, well, I guess we're over now. Could not have been done in a more chicken shit way. Fast forward, she's very happily single. Story 10. High school sweethearts. He was her first love. Married. Had 3 kids. He has a well-paying job high up in tech for the government, but it requires him to travel. She's a stay-at-home mom. Married for a long time. If I had to guess, I'd say probably over 15 years. Over the years, he comes back from traveling for work less and less. Seems distant, even with the kids. She's suspicious. Googles his name. A photo comes up of him at a father-daughter dance with a little girl who is not theirs. She comes to find out that he had a whole other life, a girlfriend, a child, a house, etc. in the city he had to travel to for work. The other woman knew about them, apparently didn't care. She takes him to court in the divorce, trying to get alimony and child support, borrows tens of thousands from her family members to help pay lawyer fees. This divorce process lasted years with all the appeals. In the end, very little alimony is awarded, and child support for the one kid who is turning 18 in a year or two, other two children over 18. Turns out he had friends in high places, including in the courts, and had a lot of money to pay for the best, most despicable divorce lawyers. Even after the grueling proceedings are over, he simply refuses to pay alimony or child support. She doesn't have the money to take him to court again. Takes a lot of money out of the 401k account she got from him to get by while she tries to find a job as an unskilled worker who hasn't been in the workforce in 15+ years. The two younger kids refuse to speak with their father unless they need money, which he usually doesn't provide regardless. They hate him. The oldest has a decent relationship with him. He was around more during her childhood than theirs. Story 11. My ex, who I lived with for something like 7 years, had encouraged me to stop drinking, and so I had. On my birthday, she brought home a bottle of red wine, a bottle of white wine, and some food for me to cook. Instead of cooking, we drank both those bottles of wine and went out on the town. We went to a bar on a pier and got pretty drunk, then went to a karaoke bar and drank a little more. After that, I wanted to go play pinball, but she was done for the night. We got into a huge argument and both stormed off in different directions to walk home. I got home first. I was upset and drunk, so I locked the door so she wouldn't be able to come inside. This was stupid and I can't defend it. It was a huge mistake. She banged on the door for a while, and I eventually let her inside. She then called the cops and told them I had abused her. I hadn't touched her. So, the cops came and took me to jail for domestic violence on my birthday. It was my first trip to jail, and it was Long Beach/Compton County. On the way to jail, the cop said this happens all the time, and he was sure she'd call and clear things up when she sobered up and I'd be out. Instead, I spent 2 weeks in jail while she got on a plane and went to my birthday party where she said I had to stay home for work. She gathered gifts that were for me and even blew out my birthday candles. I never got the gifts, all while I was in jail. There's more to the story, but long story short is that they let me out of jail and never pressed any charges because nothing happened. And that's how that relationship ended. Story 12. Dude I knew in high school was dating some chick. She didn't seem his type, but whatever, I'm not gonna judge. One day, he's driving her home after a bunch of us hung out at the local coffee shop. She lived pretty far out in the country, so it was a fairly long drive. 45 minutes or so if memory serves. He has the radio cranked right up, to the point they can't even speak. After about 15 minutes of driving like this, she turns the radio down and asks, "What are you thinking about?" To which he replies, just trying to figure out how to break up with you," and then proceeds to turn the music way back up and keep driving. For 30 more minutes. I can't even imagine the awkwardness. Story 13. Well, this happened to me. My ex, I guess, was seeing another girl behind my back, but me and him lived together. Guess she wanted him to leave me so they could actually be together. Well, instead of just breaking up with me, we go out to a bar one night, and he roughies me. While we are there, I got kicked out when I started walking funny. We made it to a gas station, and I collapsed. He called 911 and put a weed pipe in my purse. I got arrested for public intox after waking up from a coma caused by being roughied and possession of a paraphernalia for the pipe. Did a couple weeks in jail. He moved in with that other girl and, a week or two later, collapsed on the floor and died. His liver and kidneys were shit from drinking. He was 29. I got out of jail the day he died. Story 14. For context, military. Roommate owned the house we lived in. He was kind of a goober. At work, this newie one shows up, and she's absolutely gorgeous. A few weeks go by, and suddenly she's dating my roommate. For more context, in most branches, lower ranks live in shitty barracks, And once you promote high enough, you get paid an allowance for housing and get to move out on your own. So maybe a month goes by, and suddenly she's not leaving our house. He is absolutely having the time of his life. She's an angry drunk and causes a bunch of problems for all of us. But my roommate can't see past her tits. She provided nothing to the household, yet she was the most important person there. Something wasn't right. A few years go by, and she promotes a few times, and she makes E4. She gets her housing allowance. She was gone that day. Roommate was devastated. I felt horrible for the guy. He had bought a ring days prior.